welcome to the Bankers pre-Davos video. My name is Silvia Pavoni, I'm the economics editor of the Bank, and I'm here with the Bankers editor, Brian Caplen. Brian, the World Economic Forum's annual meeting is going to take place in a few days. It's going to run between the 23rd and 27th of January in Davos. The theme of this year is going to be resilient dynamism. Now, what do you think the world's leaders are going to talk about under this headline, and what does it mean?
I think what it means is that, for 5 years now, we're in the 5th year of economic challenges, really, in the global economy. And another theme is actually leadership in adversity. And I think the discussion is going to center around a continuing pattern of low growth. Even the emerging markets now are starting to slow down a bit. We're seeing 7% growth in India and China, which is not good by their standards, and sort of 3% in Brazil and India, which for a BRIC country is very low. And we still haven't seen a huge amount of recovery either in Europe or the United States. So I think, it's a question of providing leadership in this kind of tough time, and how do you cope with these problems, especially when you're making cuts to social welfare and public spending in Europe, and you've got to try and bring the population along with you. So it's going to be quite an interesting meeting. We're going to have leaders from Italy, the UK and Germany all there making speeches alongside these topics. I think one of the interesting things might be, one of the side discussions will be the UK's position in the European Union. That's suddenly become a very hot topic recently, with discussions about whether the UK would actually pull out of the European Union.
It is, and definitely something that has been in the papers of late, and is going to interest, I'm sure, a lot of the Davos goers. Now, the Bank, as every year, has put together a special section within the magazine that ranges from in-depth features, opinion pieces, to big interviews that would appeal to a Davos audience. And you've carried out a very interesting interview with the charismatic and energetic chairman of Santander, Emilio Botín. What did Mr. Botín say about his outlook for this year and the growth prospects for a bank such as Santander?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the issue contains, as usual, we have a sort of input from a number of finance ministers from Peru and Rwanda and Luxembourg, and also central bank governors, of great prominence. And one of the star interviews obviously was with Emilio Botín. So he's obviously a legend in banking terms, really. And I was invited to a breakfast at Santander headquarters in Madrid with Mr. Botín. He's 78, but you wouldn't put him above 60, actually. He's still very sprightly, very energetic. And of course, what he did was he took a regional bank, Santander, and turned it into a global bank. It's actually the 14th largest bank in our top 1,000 ranking of world banks. The things that are on his mind are things like, he's, like most bankers, he's concerned about regulatory overshoot. Mm-hmm. So he's worried that the massive regulations coming along is going to have some unintended consequences. He thinks that possibly capital ratios are going to be too high. We've gone from a situation where they were too low to too high, and he's worried about the impact on growth. And his view is that actually with banking, it's the supervision, it's the quality of supervision that really matters more than the regulation. And I think the other interesting thing that's unique about Santander is the way they have this autonomous structure. So it's obviously a very well-spread global bank now, and it has operations particularly in Latin America, but also in the UK. And it operates standalone subsidiaries. So those are all capitalized and funded independently. So it's, in some ways, it's a regulator's dream, because you don't have to worry about whether the parent would get into trouble or another subsidiary would get into trouble. You only have to worry about your subsidiary in your country.
Sure, that's a very interesting model that Santander is mastered excellently over the years. Now, so supervision ahead of regulation, and in Europe we are talking about politicians and bankers very much focused on banking union, so the project of creating a banking union in Europe. Do you think that it's going to be something that is going to be discussed at Davos? And anyway, what's the situation at the moment?
Definitely.
How are talks progressing?
No, I definitely think it's going to be one of the important issues at Davos, because there was a lot of a good reception given to the announcement of a banking union last year, because clearly it's something that is felt is badly needed in order to stabilize the Eurozone and to break the link between sovereign debt and banks, where you kind of get into trouble because you're holding lots of sovereign debt. But then, as with so many EU and Eurozone initiatives, it looks good at the start, but then when you start to look at the details, it gets a little bit more hazy, and there's clearly a dispute going on amongst the countries about the degree to which Eurozone funds or the European Stability Mechanism funds, the bailout fund, would be used or could be used to recapitalize banks. And it's quite interesting. I had an interview this week with the Swedish Finance Minister, Anders Borg, and he's very concerned about the Union because Sweden is outside the Eurozone, like the UK, so it needs to have freedom for its own regulation. It doesn't need to be bound by the banking union rules, although he's in favour of a banking union. But he is concerned about the use of central funds to bail out national banks, and he thinks that that is still a job for a national government to do. And interestingly, he is still on the side of the idea of protecting bondholders, which has clearly been one of the more controversial areas, because in Ireland the bondholders were protected and the taxpayer had to pick up the bill. And I think there was hopes that through this new mechanism we might actually reverse the process. That doesn't necessarily seem to be the case now.
So a lot of fine details to be fine-tuned, and lots of big themes to be discussed, and I'm sure that the conversations at Davos are going to be very much interesting. We look forward to following them. Thank you very much, Brian.